What if the universe is full of hidden gateways, portals to other worlds, vortexes of energy, stargates beyond time and space? Paranormal researcher, author, and explorer of the unknown, Mike Ricksecker, joins me as we unravel the secrets of ancient gateways, interdimensional travel, and the forces beyond the veil. Coming up next.
It's time for Survivor Angels, an approach to strengthen trauma survivors. Here, you can escape what draws negativity and engage your positive abilities and the gifts that you've always had. Let's activate your angels. And to help you on that journey, here's Chaplain Jodi.
Welcome back to Survivor Angels, Mike.
Thanks so much for having me back, Jodi. Always a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. The topics that we cover, I couldn't cover with anybody else. So I really appreciate that you take the time and come on and do this. And so given everything that's happening in Egypt right now, and you are kind of sort of right in the middle of it, let's talk today about stargates and portals and vortexes. And what's the difference between all of those?
Well, yeah. So they're all related. You know, when we're talking about it all comes back down to energy. So when we talk about stargates and portals here on Earth, I mean, basically we're harnessing the Earth's energy, which is that magnetism that's rising up out of the ground, and depending on what it interacts with on the way up in the mantle and the crust of the Earth. Different metals and minerals in different quantities, depending on what metal and mineral it is and the quantity of that, it will create different localized electromagnetic fields, which rise up out of the ground in that like swirling vortex. In fact, our ancient symbol for those, which is the spiral, is basically if you did a cross section of that vortex energy, which is, the vortex is three-dimensional. So the two-dimensional cross section of that is a spiral. So the vortex is basically the way that the energy interacts with these different locations. Now, a portal is something that is naturally occurring in our universe. And in fact, NASA has acknowledged that we have these off the planet, but basically it's an interaction between the solar wind and the Earth's magnetic field, and they open and close. They call them X points because they don't want to use the word portal, but when these first came out, they were like, oh yeah, the portals. And they open and close at random intervals. There's no predictive model for it, even though they've had satellites up there for the last 10 years trying to study these things. But they have acknowledged that, yes, these are portals. So we know that portals are naturally occurring. And they can do a variety of different things. These particular X points allow the solar wind, the protons, and the electrons to enter into our atmosphere much quicker. Well, we also know we have things like wormholes, which is another type of portal, and that's based on the Einstein-Rosen bridge. And so there are these different types of things that can be naturally occurring. So a stargate is basically when an intelligent life form, could be human, could be something else, and when an intelligent life form has harnessed a portal to be able to use it for their own means, whether that's to go to somewhere else in the cosmos, somewhere else on Earth, another dimension, another point in time. There are a lot of different uses for these things.
Interesting. And that leads us right into Egypt.
Yes.
What do we want to call it? The heart of Stargates? Is that appropriate or isn't that appropriate?
I mean,
it's in the news right now.
It is in the news right now, big time. Yeah, there are a lot of stargates in Egypt. There are stargates all over the world, and they come in a variety of different shapes and sizes and forms. But with Egypt, you can go there now, and on our Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, we show everybody that here are the stargates. They are labeled right in plain sight. This is the Stargate, which is really fascinating. People just overlook it all the time, but it's right there. There are 5 Stargate kings that we know about at this point, in which they kind of used it as a title, but it was basically saying that they were the ones that had the authority to operate the Stargate, and in doorways and arches and entranceways to rooms, we find this symbolism in a room at the top of the Temple of Dendara, or Temple of Hathor at the Dendara. We find a variety of different types of Stargate symbolism, but then like our classic type that we usually find along doorways, it's like written in the text, and the text at Edfu, which is the building text, which really is the story of Atlantis. They call it the homeland of the primeval ones, but throughout that text, we find a lot of references to Stargates as well. So, yeah, this was a technology that was really, really prevalent throughout all of Egypt.
Oh, and we're talking ancient Egypt here, and you said 5 kings. So, really, what was the mindset for them, do you think, with these Stargates?
They use them for a variety of different reasons. Did they have interaction with other beings across the cosmos? Well, I mean, the ancient Egyptians talk all the time about being connected to the constellation of Orion, and part of their afterlife journey, which to them wasn't really the afterlife, it was just another part of life. It was going back to the constellation of Orion. The kings would become stars, which is fascinating because the Orion Nebula right up there within the constellation is a star-making nebula. Now, how did they know that all those thousands of years ago without the modern astronomy and the powerful telescopes that we have? But they knew this somehow. We also see there's some uncanny similarities between structures across the planet. When we look at the different types of pyramids and the way that they were constructed, very, very eerily similar between Egypt, the Mayan pyramids there in South America and Central America, and then other pyramids throughout the world. We also see similar symbolism, whether that's the pine cones or the spirals or the handbags. We find it all over the world between cultures that traditional archaeology say weren't connected, but how in the world they have the same symbolism? And in one of these cases, on Elephantine Island, has a temple at the top of the hill that has what we call a Stargate, but the temple at the bottom of the hill has a depiction in there of a person putting a necklace on the king as you're going into the Holy of Holies, which that part isn't such a big deal, putting the necklace on, except that the person putting the necklace on the king is this person wearing what looks like a Mayan headdress. So what in the world is somebody wearing a Mayan headdress doing there in Egypt? So they were also using these Stargates to interact with other peoples across the world.
I find it really interesting that, like you said, that you find these structures all over the world, and they wrote down in whatever form they had for writing, carving in a lot of cases, about the structures themselves and possibly entities that they encountered.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally, as you said, it was part of their culture, part of their life. Now, today, when we have sent a man to the moon and we have satellites orbiting the Earth and everything, we are so much more skeptical of all of this
I know.
than what they were. Is it because they didn't have anything to refute it, or because they maybe had a closer relationship than what we do?
Yeah, I think it is that they had that closer relationship. See, in ancient cultures, so our modern society over the past couple thousand years has really separated spirituality and science. And so, we on the spirituality side, we have these beliefs in other beings and other realms and this sort of thing. And the science, has to be, concrete, hardcore. You have to be able to touch it. You've got the scientific method to prove all these different things out, etc. We have separated those two worlds. And so you have your spiritual leaders and you have your scientists. But back in ancient times, these people were the same people. So your priests were also your scientists. So, your priests knew when to, plant the crops at the right time. They were telling you all about the astronomical alignments and all of these different things to, help society build and grow. And create, even war machines. You had your priests that were engineers that would help, create these different mechanisms to create, the different pyramids. We hear about, Imhotep being the great engineer. Well, Imhotep was a priest. So you had, spirituality and science that were actually combined back then. And, couple thousand years ago, or the last 1500 at least, that that really started to become more and more separated. So yeah, it's a shame. We need, because I always look at it as one can always prove the other. You can use science to prove spirituality. You can use spirituality to prove science. They go hand in hand.
I totally agree with that. And I think we're starting to kind of come full circle with it now, that I
Yeah.
think we're starting to get back to that place. I really hope we are. One thing that I found interesting that I did not know before when I was doing a little bit of research for our conversation here is everybody knows that there are black holes out there.
Yeah.
I did not know that there are white holes.
Yeah, there's a lot of different forms of uh, cosmological bodies up there in the heavens. We have black holes, white holes. There was a report that came out here a few weeks ago that they believe our universe is inside a black hole. So what does that mean? What's beyond the black hole? So yeah, there are all kinds of different of these things, for lack of a better term, that are out there. And it's fascinating what they keep finding. And, where's all the science headed? I don't know, because you look back about 50 years ago, the idea of a black hole was still highly debated. There were scientists that were laughing at Stephen Hawking, saying, no, black holes don't really exist. That's just a fanciful notion, a fanciful idea. And now today we take it as just fact. Black holes exist, and yeah, now we might be in one. So when you have ideas of white holes, or some of these other bizarre types of galaxies or type of stars, and things like this that people are talking about, it's so easy because we haven't really heard of these things before to just discredit the notion. But no, these things really do exist out there, and there are things yet that we still have not yet discovered.
And we started out talking about stargates and portals and vortexes, which um, I see as entry points, but then I was also reading that there are exit points within the universe as well. Is that true? And what does that look like? Or what do they look like?
Exit points as far as what, like at the end of the Stargate? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, the exit point is going to it should look fairly similar to the entrance point. And when we think about, traditionally, when we think about stargates and portals and these sorts of things, I mean, for one, we have the movies and the film. So we have like this, giant circle that we walk through, and, the movie and films show it's like this watery substance. You walk through and zoom, you're off through this tunnel to another point in the cosmos. And that kind of adheres to the idea of the Einstein-Rosen bridge, and, that because that
Right.
being a wormhole, a tunnel sort of device. And, really though, I think the film that got it correct, because you see this sort of thing in like the movie Contact shows it, even Star Wars, when they go into jump to hyperspace, zoom, you're off in a tunnel. I think the movie or the film that got it correct was Interstellar, because at the end of those stargates or wormholes, it's just they show it as like, yeah, it's a big circle, and you walk through the thing. Well, a circle is a two-dimensional object. Well, we're in 3D space, and in 3D space, a circle is actually a sphere. So Interstellar, they had their spacecraft go into this giant sphere sitting out there in space, but it was actually an entranceway. It was actually the portal to some other point in the cosmos. And so on the other side of that would have been another sphere. That would have been two ends of it. And where I've gone with my latest book, Portals to the Stars, when I start talking about this phenomenon, we we see all the time different orbs and balls of light and things like this, and many times associated with UFOs, associated with Sasquatch, associated with all kinds of things that we might see out in the woods or in the wild, and this sort of thing, maybe even in our bedrooms. And then all of a sudden there's some being or entity that's there. Well, these balls of light, if we're talking about some sort of passageway that is spherical in nature, that's entry or exit point, well, is that the way these beings are coming into our existence, into our reality here? As the extraterrestrial using that ball of light, is that where the UFO is coming out of the ball of light? When we had this drone activity a few months ago, people were seeing the drones coming out of the balls of light. So it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's the portal. That's the Stargate.
And you talk about orbs. That's sort of like the common thing, especially in the paranormal community and everything. And I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I have to you, but when we were in Ireland, one of the people who was with us, she was just snapping pictures in the Gale in Cork, and my husband Jeff and her were looking at it, and there was an orb very clearly on there, but there was something inside the orb. And so Jeff said to Tracy, "You've got to show Jodi this." Well, so when I looked at it, Tracy just looked at me like, "What?" And I'm like, "That's an angel orb,
Ah,
is what it is. Probably a portal where the angel has come through or did go through,
yep.
because there was a geometric shape inside of it." That's how I identify angel orbs, is with
Okay.
the geometric shape, because they're tied to the sacred geometry.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. What's interesting. Okay. So with angels, in again, my book Portals to the Stars, the second chapter, it's called Portals in the Wilderness, and it gets into a lot of different varieties of portals and interactions that people have had out in the wild. But I also get into the orbs that another one that people see come through, Sasquatch. Okay, see a Sasquatch out in the wood, and a lot of times there are these balls of lights that are nearby, and then all of a sudden, the Sasquatch disappears. Where'd they go? Was that through the portal? And I include a very, very fascinating QHHT session by Catherine Swin, is the practitioner there in Edinburgh, Scotland,
Okay.
and she has a session with another practitioner, Ellis, and during this past life regression that they go through, Ellis is traveling through this tunnel, and when she finally gets to this place on Earth, she's looking at herself, and basically she is the Sasquatch. And so the Sasquatch was using these portals to move in and out of our realm from whatever their dimension is. And it's interesting because she does describe the home world and all that as well. But yeah, so these beings are using these modes of transportation to enter our world.
I could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
Neither one of us have all day, but just to let people know who are watching and listening, within the description for the podcast, I will have all of Mike's books listed and everything, so you can tap into those, as well as all the places that you can catch him between podcasts and shows and all the other media that he does. Let's before we run out of time, let's talk about the Egypt trip.
Yeah.
It's not your first go around, and Mohammed, who is your tour
Mhm.
guide, you have been with him for quite a while, and he's been doing it for quite a while.
He
So
has.
let people know basically what that trip offers, because
Mhm.
I think it's probably the most incredible trip, if people want to go to Egypt, that is out there. So here's your chance. Promo away, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you, Jodi. Yeah, Stargates of Ancient Egypt. This is our third annual tour of this particular tour. I've been out to Egypt several times. Mohammed is a native Egyptian, and he's been running the tours out there for about 25 years. He's an Egyptologist, and he has put together a really, really unique tour here where we go to all of these fantastic ancient sites to actually find the stargates. And like I said, there are many, many stargates that are out there, and uh, there's so many extras on this tour as well. So like just even going to the Great Pyramid of Giza, we get 2 hours just ourselves in the Great Pyramid, and everything's opened up to us. So uh, when the public has their ticket during the daytime hours, they just walk up the Grand Gallery into the King's Chamber and they're back down, and it just takes a few minutes. No, we have 2 hours, just us, and we get all the chambers, Queen's Chamber, Subterranean Chamber, all of it. And it's just really, really amazing to be able to do something like that. So yeah, we hit so many of the different pyramids between that, Saqqara, the Step Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid, that whole area there. We have a really special add-on this year that we're doing, where we're going up to Fayum, which has the amazing oasis there, but it also has what was called the floating pyramid. And it used to be surrounded by water, and it looked like it was floating on the water. It was built by Sinriset II back in the Middle Kingdom. Well, his son, Sinriset III, was one of our Stargate kings. So we're going to be up there looking for that connection, and also visiting the Egyptian labyrinth up there. So that's an amazing treat. And then when we go down to Luxor again, visiting such amazing temples, and we find Stargates at Karnak, Luxor, Hatshepsut's mortuary temple, all of these fantastic places. Of course, we visit the Valley of the Kings. That's right there on the other side of Hatshepsut's temple. But we get on a Nile cruise, and we are on the Nile cruise for 4 days. Stopping off at all the temples on the way. But even when we're there in Luxor, we're staying at the Joliville Resort, which is absolutely beautiful. It's right there in the Nile. And so we're going to all these different amazing temples. We take a day trip up to Dendara and Abydos. And, these are some sites that are really heavily steeped in not just the Stargate symbolism, but also the cosmology, the Egyptian zodiac, Hathor, who was an amazing goddess of healing, fertility, and music. And just her temple has this amazing, gorgeous blue ceiling that's just, you have the zodiac, the cosmology of the ancient Egyptians right there, tying right back into the Stargates. So it's just such an amazing tour. So I invite everybody to come join us.
We'll have all that information in the description for the podcast again as well. And it's in November now of 2025, just in case people are wondering when it is. You just said something that brought up an interesting question. Is the zodiac, the Egyptian zodiac, different than what we know the zodiac to be?
Well, it's interesting because it's interesting because it's similar in many ways to the zodiac that we know now. There is a constellation that is a part of that zodiac that we're not sure what it is because it is a little different. And then there's a lot of other features to it that really it's more than just a zodiac. It's really a star chart. It's like a star map.
Interesting. Okay, so there you go. Another reason to go to Egypt. All right, so I saved the best question for last here because I want to leave people scratching their heads with all of this. If they aren't already, they probably are already. But what are your thoughts on near-death experiences and the portals and vortexes and stargates? What all of the things that we've already talked about. How does that fit in? What does that look like?
Yeah, everything's connected. We're talking about, everything comes down to frequency, energy, resonance, vibration within our universe. And, kind of harkening back to my work in Travels Through Time, all time is concurrent, past, present, future is here. And so when we start talking about, kind of really these layering of different dimensions and in aspects of our universe. So when somebody is having that near-death experience, they've had whatever happened with them, as far as the death part of the physical 3D body aspect of it. We are a fourth dimensional consciousness inside our three-dimensional body. So something has happened traumatically to our body in that moment where our consciousness becomes free floating. and we can go visit these other dimensions and realms. So in that way, it is related to like a portal or a Stargate, in that, we are using energy to enter into these different worlds. And then, we end up zapped back into our body. We're not ready yet, whatever the circumstance may be that we come back here. But what's interesting about that, and so many near-death experiencers, is they bring something back with them, because they have touched those other realms, those other dimensions. It's like their frequency became for a brief moment in tune with that other realm, and they bring some of that back with them, so they stay partially in tune with that other dimension or realm. And that's why they have so many of these really fascinating experiences after their NDE.
It's just more validation that this goes far beyond what our reality shows us.
Yes, absolutely.
Mike, thank you once again for coming on Survivor Angels. And again, this won't be our last time to do this.
Well, thank you again so much, Jodi. It's always such a pleasure talking with you. We have some fantastic conversations.
Yes, we do. All right, everybody, check out Mike's information where you can get his books. Check out Egypt for November, and you will find it quite fascinating, as do I.
Thanks again for joining Chaplain Jodi on Survivor Angels. For more information, go to chaplainjodi.me. That's chaplainjodi.me. And on Facebook at Survivor Angels-Chaplain Jodi. This is Dave Schrader. Until next time, sending you off to activate your angels.